last week I had a power talk with Julie McManus, and we were talking about masterminds and masterminds specifically for female corporates in order to break through this isolation at the top. Because it is true, right? Men or female, although I want to know your experiences there also. The higher you get on the corporate ladder, the more difficult it is, first of all, to admit that you don't know something or admit that you are anxious or that you are worried because everybody's looking at you. You are the one that is making choices and taking the decisions. You are the one leading. And on the other hand, the higher you get, the less people understand the challenges and the complexity of what you are navigating. And so it's very difficult to have that feedback and those conversations that really can support and sponsor you in your decision making process. But even then, this being fearless, this myth of you have to be fearless and you have to be strong and you have to stand there and you have to know it all, where does it come from?
We believe it's a form of leadership, and it's the narrative that we have, most of us have grown up with, that it's important to be fearless and that you shouldn't have fear. We hear a lot about no fear, and the messages that we are surrounded by tend to influence our perspective, right? We are products of our own environment. And so I think that at least what I'll bring up as a story of where it can stem from is, for example, and I share this example in my book, that when a baby is crying, we are taught to support that child so that we quiet them down. Our fear is that they are in pain, and that's the right kind of worry, meaning we want to provide support to a child or a baby. But we are taught in that same stream of thinking to not cry. And then it's a lack of an example of leadership if we are crying, or if we express anxiety, worry, doubt, or fear. And so those messages at a very young age come up in general conversations or interactions. And so over time, our behaviors or our brain patterns, either one, are taught to act in a different way. And there are numbers of quotes that I can recall. One in particular that comes to mind, that Nelson Mandela talks about, that courage is not without fear, it's the triumph over it. And if we can set our mind on the idea that courageous leadership is more about understanding what your emotions are, fear being one of them, we can actually be more wise about how we proceed in the strategies that we design, the organizations that we create, and the interactions that we have with one another. The last thing I'll say is that fear is truly an intersection between how close I feel to someone. So the idea that I will be more inclusive with someone is that if I can understand them more. But sometimes we're fearful of who that person is or that interaction. When in fact, if we can better understand why we have that fear, that worry or doubt about someone, we're more likely to engage in conversation because we have now an understanding of that emotion and why we're being impacted.
In your experience and in the research that you did for your book, have you seen a difference between men and women leaders? Because when you go back to this childhood imprints, especially for boys, it's boys don't cry, boys are fearless, boys have to get over this. And for little girls, there's a little bit more flexibility there.